And now for something completely different.
Watch us on YouTube.
Listen on your favourite podcast platform.
Or ask your smart speaker
to play the podcast Leicester Till I Die.
Subscribe, like, follow, and join in now.
Strap yourself in.
Because we're set up, switched on, and ready to go.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram.
This podcast is proud to be part of the Talk Sport Fan Network. Talk Sport. Powered by fans.
Right, Chris. All right, how the devil are we? Well, I hope. Did you get to bed last night? I think it was about gone midnight when I'd finished doing the transfer window, but for once it was a brilliant window. Well, 4 players in technically, 1 straight out to a sister club, Laven. But you know what? It's the future. And that's not garlic bread. No, I mean, you've got to get these players in. A lot of people were saying, like, why buy somebody only to throw them out? Well, you've got to think of the future, and he looks a really, really hot prospect, as indeed did our guest tonight. See what I did there? What a link. He was born the year I left school, so I actually feel like really, really old now. And I know what you're going to say. You are old, Chris. Cheers, guys. But... I may well have his signature on a shirt somewhere, if I'm wrong, because I think he may well have been in the team when my eldest son was mascot. We will find out. It's a pleasure to have him, and I always do appreciate it when ex-players come on and have a chat with us. Hope you do, guys, as well. Get some questions in. And we will ask them if we've got time towards the end. Andrew says, ain't it nice to support a club that's debt-free? Certainly is. And Nate is in as well. Good evening, Nate. How are you? Do smash the likes if you are in the chat. It will be much appreciated. Look, he's waited long enough. Let's get him in. I can remember him playing for Leicester City. Oh, I think it was then the Walker Stadium. Let's bring him in and say a very good evening to David Connolly. Good evening, David.
Good evening, everyone. How are you, Chris?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Was
it the Walkers when you were there? I think it was.
Yeah, I think so. It definitely wasn't the King Power. You know, and the training ground. You know, it's the club has come a long way, obviously, since I was there. So obviously, it's exponentially just grown. It's been quite incredible. So I think, as you saw with Harry Suter saying, you know, facilities world class, and obviously new training ground. So yeah, it's like a different club, really, I guess.
I was talking. You may well remember Rob Tanner, the Leicester correspondent for the Athletic, and he was saying that at the new training ground they actually have soft pitches for certain players, like Johnny Evans, who likes to train on a soft pitch, and hard pitches for. Yeah, like Jamie Vardy, I mean, you never have had that in your. And I'm not going to say that you're old, but that was never the case back then, was it?
No, something interesting, because I was at Stamford Bridge for the Chelsea game.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's still a lot of people at the club that were there when I was there. I mean, I said the club has, grown, but what's good about the club is, John Rudkin's still there. Andrew Neville's still there, and obviously Kitman Maka is still there. So I was talking to Maka, and he was just talking about the training ground, and this is you do get this with new buildings. They become so big. He was like, it's great, it's so big. He says, I barely see anyone because, in the old training ground at Belvoir, like it's right in the middle. Everyone walks past his room. You have a lot of interaction.
Yeah.
And sometimes when clubs get big, and I've been at clubs and got promoted, and those clubs suddenly grow, the staff grow. Before you know it, there's people around the place you don't even know their name. So it's quite interesting for Mac hearing that his training ground is. His kit room is at one end, and he barely sees anyone because it's so big and so vast. But that's the kind of modern
map
day.
So he doesn't get lost. Though?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I remember with you now. I was thinking this, but Andrew, I knew you would come out and say this. Basically, he doesn't look any older. He doesn't. I mean, you tell me, right? If you can tell the then and now, that was the then, and this is the now.
I feel it. Let me tell you, I feel it. I mean, one thing, I don't do any exercise. It's terrible. I used to be absolutely obsessed. I didn't even. It's funny now. I wake up so early for coffee, but I didn't drink coffee, right, till I was 35 because I thought coffee was bad for you. And I was 35 when I had my first taste of coffee. So, but these days now, I'm don't do any exercise, don't do any gym. I walk the dogs, and that's about it. So, anyway,
I've got to ask this because I always mean to ask this, and I always forget. And we'll obviously in a second we'll sort of start back at your career. But Christmas Day, I mean, because obviously you've got games on Boxing Day, and you're talking about keeping fit. I mean, is Christmas Day miserable for a professional footballer?
No. In fact, it's the complete opposite because I think sometimes there's nothing worse than being stuck in the house all day. I think when you play football and you go in for an hour. You'd be in for an hour, 2 hours. I mean, come on, it's to go and play football every day of your life. I don't think it's that big a sacrifice, to be honest. And I think a lot of lads quite liked it because they got away from sort of the mother-in-law. Oh yeah, exactly. Kids present. But they come back, have dinner and then done.
Are you allowed to have I'm going to say a full English, but a full Christmas meal, or are you?
Yeah. I mean, in fact, after I left Leicester, I went to Wigan. I remember actually because there was a few lads that were on their own, and one of them was Pascal Chimbomba. You probably remember Pascal. But, he had nowhere to go, so Jason Roberts, being a great lad, invited him to his house for Christmas dinner. For come around Christmas Day, really nice. But he said basically Pascal just had a standard Christmas. Turned up, ate, fell asleep in the chair, and went home. He was like, he didn't offer anything. So I think for football players, obviously, you'd still have your Christmas meal, but you just.
There I was. All these years, I've been feeling sorry for you all.
No, definitely don't. No.
Andrew says here, believe it or not, Chris doesn't exercise either. You know me too well, Andrew. I actually have a walking machine that I bought during COVID, and I must admit it is now the most expensive clothes hanger.
Like one of those bicycles, like one of those bicycles. It's just. Gathering dust. Yeah,
exactly, and it's right next to my bed. All I've got to do is climb out of bed. But it looks good if anybody comes round. LCFC Kid, good evening. He says my first game 4-2 win against Stoke at home. David Connolly hat trick. Wanted to have his name on the back of the shirt, but Dad knew he was on his way out. Oh, that sounds like he's a hitman or something, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think I'd scored in the first game and then got against Sheffield United and got that hat trick against Stoke, and then the bid came in from Wigan. So I think at the time I was top scorer in the Championship, but there'd only been a couple of games, obviously. So it was a completely different time at the club, than it was obviously at the minute.
Well, yeah, I mean. Like I say, you were born in 77, which was the year I left school. Of course, the good thing with that is you missed all the joy of glam rock, which I lived through. How did you get into football?
I don't, just like everyone else. I mean, just playing it with, with your mates, although probably my childhood was heavily influenced by my parents, because my dad was, deep into Gaelic games, so hurling and Gaelic football. And basically, I didn't go to watch football. I went to watch Irish sport. So I'd be at hurling or Gaelic grounds every Sunday without fail. But at those grounds, I wouldn't play hurling or Gaelic football. I'd be playing soccer, football, with a lot of the sort of kids that were now born in England from Irish parents. So we'd all be playing football, going, "What are those idiots doing, whacking each other in the face with those hurling sticks?" Going to hospital. We'll just stick playing football. So yeah, that was me.
And you obviously ended up, first club was Watford. Again, a different kettle of fish now, Watford. 26 appearances there, 10 goals. That's nearly 1 in 2. You started off pretty much as you carried on for the rest of your career.
I was really lucky because they had it was a different time in those days, because now you've got the academy system, which is great. But it was a very small setup at Watford. So there was one coach for each team. You knew everyone. Kenny Jackett was one of them, who ended up being a terrific Football League manager. There was Stuart Murdoch, who ended up being a Football League manager. John McDermott, who's now at the FA. I mean, there was a lot of really good people there who were just starting out. And I was really lucky because everything was so simple. I mean, played for your local team, got spotted, ended up in their sort of youth system, played through the youth teams, done well. And unlike probably nowadays, there was an injury in the first team, and as a 17-year-old, I forget how, you get the chance. You get the chance. It's so simple. Whereas probably nowadays, I think, wow, these kids have probably got to go through under 21 football and have numerous sort of loans, and it just seemed a lot easier then to get your chance. So I got my chance, and I think I scored a hat-trick on my debut, and and that was it really. So I kind of stayed in the team. But it just seemed a lot easier in those days, to sort of to get your chance. But it was I loved it because it was so, look, we were up and down terraces, we're a bit old school, cleaning the stadium, having a sandwich, having a little roll for lunch. I look back on it very fondly.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Different times, though, like you say.
Yeah.
And of course, your exploits at Watford got you a move to Feyenoord.
Yeah, although I don't know if it was necessarily. It was more that I'd played for Ireland. I remember David for Ireland that summer, and we had played Portugal and Holland prior to Euro '96, and Holland. It was that amazing team. Full of sort of superstars, and we played them in Feyenoord Stadium, and I played well against them, really well. And then I scored for Ireland. I think the next game we played Mexico or America, USA, and I was scoring goals as a 18, 19-year-old, or I forget, 19, 20, whatever it was. Yeah. And they were looking for a striker, and it just sort of it might have been a bit of luck or a bit of coincidence, And when a club like that comes calling, for those that don't know about a club like Feyenoord, I mean, it is like an incredible football club. It really is. So huge fan base in the Champions League, a massive. I mean, I thought, well, I'm never going to get this chance again, and I didn't, to play in the Champions League, and it was just an amazing place. I can't. It's difficult to describe. I mean, they would have like stands made up for pre-season training. There'd be 4,000 or 5,000 people that would watch the first day. I mean, you'd never seen anything like it. I had no idea what I was getting into. and the level was really high at the time. Really high, and technically above the level that I was at. But I was going to give it a damn good try and get to that level. But it was a good experience, really good experience. Living abroad on your own as a kid, so it was good.
I mean, you mentioned something there, which I must admit, I totally understand, which is sometimes you can't say no when these offers come along. And, you look at, some play, like even managers now, everybody says, well, why did Harry Potter go to Chelsea? But these offers don't always come round. And they're not going to come round if you wait 5 or 6 years and you're having a bad season or whatever. You have to grab it at the time. And it must, like you said, it must have been an amazing, thing to think, wow, I'm at Feyenoord here.
Yeah, I mean, at that time they had, I think, Ronald Koeman was, I turn up training and I'm jogging around with Ronald Koeman. I mean, someone I watched on TV. Henrik Larsson was there, but they didn't want him. So he was training with us, but he was basically in the reserves till he went to Celtic. I mean, it was a roll call of top names. And the season I left, they won the UEFA Cup. So it was a really good team. And also I learned a lot about professionalism. They were so professional over there. I mean, I was used to kind of your lovable rogues that you might get at Watford, and this was these players who were sort of in the gym for 2 hours before training even started, and you're like, oh wow, this is how it is at this level, So it was a complete eye opener, but it was brilliant. And these opportunities these days. I mean, and then the money was obviously you're going to be offered a contract and you're going to be offered money, and that's one thing. But the other thing is the actual: are you going to get a chance to play for a club like this again? Because you might not play in the Champions League, and I didn't. You might not play a club 50,000 every week. So well, at home anyway. So it was something you couldn't really turn down.
Yeah. I've got to say, now I'm looking at this because while you're at Feyenoord, you went on loan to a club, Excelsior.
Yeah, so we played it like in the Champions League. The manager got sacked, Harry Hahn, who I'm sure you would know of Harry Hahn, who's pretty famous. He got sacked, and I scored on my debut, and actually I was doing pretty well. And then new manager came in. I could tell he didn't like me, and we had a disagreement, and basically he wouldn't play me, and so what could I do? So I could either hang on there, try and go on loan, get some goals I'm going to play, and that's exactly what I did. And I went on loan, I played, I scored, I got recalled back to the club when he left, and in the end got offered a new contract at the club. So I was pretty pleased about how it turned around, but I felt that the manager at the time, Leo Beenakker, I didn't like what he'd done to me. It was pretty unfair, but he just didn't rate me. So I can understand it, but I didn't like it.
No, understandable. I've got to check, because obviously with Wikipedia, you're never 100% sure how true the facts are when you read them. But at Excelsior, you played, it says here, 48 games, and you scored 42 goals.
Yeah, I mean, Mick McCarthy came over to watch, and actually, it was quite funny, really, because Mick was Ireland manager at the time, and he said he was going to, come over, and he was, because obviously you don't know what the level's like, but I knew what the level was in comparison to obviously playing in England, the Championship, and everything, and I was like, I'm pretty sure this is not too far off that sort of level. I don't know where exactly. But, like a 1 in 2, if you play, 30 games, 15 goals, or 40 games, 20 games, around, I put it around about that sort. And then when I came back to England, my goals at Wimbledon were pretty similar. So to me, I equated them that they weren't that dissimilar. If you get what I mean? Probably a bit lower. But, if you're trying to pitch it. But Mick came over anyway to watch once. And he was pretty impressed with the level. He was like, "Oh right, this is." So I was in the Ireland squads. It wasn't. He was pretty. He was like, "No, this is a good." But anyway, he was actually staying in a hotel, but he didn't want to stay in a hotel, and he was like, "Well, Dave, can I stay at yours?" And I was like, "At my house." And he was like, "Well, is that all right?" And I was like, "Okay." So like
having the boss round, isn't it? And him sleeping over.
Well, I had my national manager like sleeping upstairs. And I remember at the time we sort of there was a sort of a wasp nest at the top, and that was the spare room. And I remember going in there, hoovering it up, thinking, "Oh my God, if he gets stung in the middle of the night, I am dead meat." So but it was quite funny. Your national team manager sort of, and it was a night game. He stayed after a night game as well, and he put the telly on, and he's flicking through the telly, and after 11 o'clock. That it was Canal Plus, and he landed on Canal Plus, which is like the Sky at the time. And it was a bit racy, and he was like, "Bloody hell, Dave, what's this?" And I was like, "Oh, quick, turn it over. So it was quite funny.
So I say you had your national manager sleeping over in a room that had a wasp nest and watching porn. That's basically you saying, isn't it?
That is exactly what happened. Yeah. He loved it. He woke up in the morning, had a great night's sleep. He couldn't wait to come back. Yeah.
I bet he couldn't. Things you couldn't do at home.
Yeah.
But you came back to England, and Wimbledon was your next club. Was that crazy gang time?
Yeah, I mean, so Wimbledon had just sold Jason Yule to Charlton for a lot of money, and they needed a striker. But I'd already agreed to stay in Holland, and I'd verbally agreed it. And I was driving to actually sign it. I was about 2 hours away from signing the contract. And then a friend of mine who I played with for Ireland, Kenny Cunningham, who brilliant defender. He happened to call me just by chance and just said, "Look, we've sold Jason Yule, would you come here?" And I said, "Well, to be honest, I'm signing over here again." And he was like, "Well, no, don't. I'll get the manager, Terry Burton, to call you." So Terry called me, and it was a chance to come back to sort of London way, and so I sort of changed my mind and came back and signed for Wimbledon, and I had 2 really good seasons there, very happy seasons there.
You were 42 goals again in 2 seasons. A good scoring rate, wasn't it? But was that post crazy gang, or were you there during the?
They just got relegated, so no, it was. You had some of the remnants of the crazy gang, but probably with relegation, a few left. So it was around that time, but it wasn't quite the. Vinnie Jones wasn't there, and things like that. But very happy club, really enjoyed it. Very simple. Reminded me, like my time at Watford, and settled down pretty well. Formed a good relationship with Neil Shipley up top. Me and him.
Yeah.
And I was playing in a 4-4-2 in Holland. I was like a lone striker. I had to get more involved in the play, all that sort of stuff. So it was a different way of playing, and there was a World Cup coming up for Ireland. You're a bit closer. You're around. So yeah, and it worked out quite well.
Did Mick McCarthy not ring up and say, "What the bloody hell are you doing? I can't come and see you now."
Well, exactly. I mean, I still talk to Mick now, which is a testament to what a great man he is. But no, so yeah, he's look, that year the final had won the UEFA Cup, so you think they probably wouldn't have won it if I was there, but you were part. You might have been part of something special, but that's the way it goes.
That's it. That's the thing. You make your decisions, and we were talking before, weren't we? Football, it can build you up one week and kick you down the next. But you see at Wimbledon, and then West Ham United came in for you. Glenn Roeder there, the captain, and scored on your debut again.
Yeah, I mean, I did a podcast with for West Ham. Ironically, it just seems to all come at once.
Yeah.
And I knew Glenn from my time at Watford because I was coming through the youth team, and Glenn was the first team manager. So again, another club, a bit like Leicester. West Ham relegated from the Premier League. And it seemed like I might be the man to score goals in the Championship to get them back up. So. Look, they had a great, terrific squad, and that and the club appealed to me because I thought, well, I want to play with Jermaine Defoe. I want to play with Michael Carrick. These are the Joe Cole who was there, although he then left before the start of the season. I want to play with these players because these are top players, and if I do, I'll score goals. We'll do well. But it was a difficult. It was a bit like in Holland where you sign for a manager, he's under pressure, they got relegated, he gets sacked. And there's another manager that comes in, although I knew him, Alan Pardew. But I just found I got to a great start and I was really happy doing well with Glenn and then Trevor Brooking. And then Alan Pardew came in and it sort of, I don't know, it just, the goals sort of didn't flow as much. I don't know why. Something just wasn't. I don't know why. I can't put my finger on it. It might be a bit like my first sort of 6 months at Leicester, where I didn't, hit the back of the net regularly. So I look at my last 6 months at Leicester, and I got 1 in 2, 10 in 20 games. But that initial finding my feet within, a new team, a new system, I don't know what went wrong, but it didn't flow as freely when Alan took over.
No. And then Mickey Adams came in for you, recently relegated Leicester City. Did it take you long to decide to come? Or, I mean, at that time, like I say, we had just got relegated.
Yeah, I mean, we lost in the playoff final, a really bad game to Palace at West Ham with a scruffy goal. And I think, he took off the front three. We all came off the front three for West Ham. So I think someone had to go. There was just too many who, he felt weren't delivering. So someone had to go. And then Leicester came in and there might have been someone else, but I spoke to Mickey and he was like, look, we've got a good side. We've just been relegated. We'll have a chance of going back up. And I thought, well, yeah, why, you look at the team again, strong side, why not? Give it a good go. So, so I signed for Leicester, and ironically, then the first game of the season, that season was against West Ham. Would you believe it? I mean, you just can't write it. And I remember it because I said it today on this West Ham podcast. But the Leicester fans are singing, to the West Ham fans, we've got Dave Connolly and all that.
Yeah.
And then I missed the chance, and the West Ham fans saying, you've got Dave Connolly. So that was good fun.
You got to love the banter, haven't you? Sometimes.
Yeah.
But you joined. It was interesting because it was a difficult time for.
It was. Yeah.
I remember my son. It actually wasn't sort of when you were playing when he was mascot, but he came in. I was at home watching the telly and I had Sky on, and it was obviously the Leicester La Manga affair with the false accusations by certain ladies over there. And he walked in while it was on, and he was saying, "Well, what's going on, Dad?" And I'm like, I wasn't expecting to have this conversation with you when he was only sort of 10 or 11 or something. But what was the atmosphere like? Because I mean, that obviously wasn't planned, but I mean, it was in the news. It was a huge story at the time. We got relegated. It had all gone wrong.
It was difficult because I mean I was coming in after that, but there was that lingering, it was lingering in the background, I guess. But also the fact that it was a team that, once I got there, there's a lot of players to integrate. There was a lot of new players to integrate, and also probably quite a few aging players.
Yeah.
And it was transient by Leicester's geographical location. I worked out that not many players lived in Leicester after a while, because we had players from the north, and Jason Wilcox or Danny Tiato or whoever, and then we had sort of more from up north. Then we had some from down south, me or Ian Walker or Martin Keown or whatever, and it just seemed like, it just needed someone to grab it and go, you're signed for Leicester, you live in Leicester, because it was too easy to leave training and everyone shoot off, dart off back, and spend like hours in the car. So it was a hard one to get going, because I think that the players were really good. Like the squad, the players that we had there were good, but I mean, we just started so badly. And it was difficult. It was difficult to recover after the bad start. So I think we had a few defeats: Millwall, Watford, QPR. Obviously, I scored, but got sent off, and it just seemed so hard to get going.
I mean, I'm just looking at that time, and Russ. Good evening, Russ. It says, "I love listening to David on Talk Sport. He's a great co-commentator." Very nice of you to say, Russ. Just looking then at that season. There were 17 players that came in, 22 players that went out. It must have been like a revolving door on the training ground. Like, who are you?
Yeah, and to be honest, you probably don't pay that much attention to that when really you should as a player, because I just found it so, and I never laid a blame at, if I'm not doing well, I go and work harder. I don't look at anyone else. But it was just so difficult to settle. I don't know why. I just couldn't get, and I was being played, but I don't. It's difficult to put your finger on why I wasn't finding the back of the net. And as I said, the last 6 months, when I did, and I was settled and I was playing well, I think I got like 10 in the last 20 games, and then I started the next season with 4. So you put those together and you go, well, you're in a rich vein of form now for like a period of time, but you just started so slowly. It's difficult to put my finger on it. And it was a shame for Mickey, but it was shame.
You were top scorer. Sorry, you were top scorer, I think, that season, weren't you?
Yeah, but it probably wasn't enough, because it was really only the last 6 months, I think, that I found my feet and then started banging them in regularly. Yeah, I mean, and the one time when I do break my duck, I think it was against QPR. It was a really harsh sending off, really harsh, and I think Mickey Adams went bananas at me. But I think it was.
You would say that, because, wouldn't you?
Well, it was. It was the second yellow, and I remember it was Mark Bircham, and I think Mark made a living of getting players sent off. And I jumped for a ball, and not intentional, and he went down like I'd deliberately elbowed him or something, which I didn't. But anyway, it just seemed to be that everything. It just, when you break your duck, you're winning 2-0, get flipping sent off, and then we lose the game. And that was how it went at that time.
If only we'd got something that could have reviewed that, something like VAR.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, let's not get started on that. But Mickey Adams, as it was the manager that brought you in, he had offered his resignation after the La Manga affair, and it was a difficult time, I think, all around the club. But they didn't accept his resignation. But he did actually then obviously leave. Was it October that season?
Yeah, and obviously then, we had the upheaval. We had, I think, Howard Wilkinson, and we had in my time there, we had Rob Kelly in charge, Craig Levine, so it went through the obviously Mickey had been a hugely important manager for Leicester City, right? I mean, he'd left a big impact on the football club. So it was, I felt, you feel responsible when a lot of squad surgery, a lot of players out, a lot of players in, you don't gel quickly. And obviously then the manager goes,
Yeah, just sort of some good news for the Leicester fans. Man United have just gone 2-0 up against Nottingham Forest, so 5-0 on aggregate. I'd like to pass my condolences on to any Nottingham Forest fans that are watching. I don't think there'll be many. Did I sound like rather happy about that then?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's any real surprise. It should be a good final, though. It should be a good final.
Yes, it should be. Yeah, I think it should. And I've got to be honest with you, I think, just sidetracking for a minute, good luck to Newcastle.
Yeah.
They deserve something, I think, after all these years.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, as a fan, and I think a lot of fans, and thanks for your question, Nathan, we'll ask that a bit later on, but as a fan, I think a lot of us Leicester fans look at the Craig Levein time, not necessarily with the nicest of memories. He did bring a lot of, like you say, guys from north of the border down, didn't he? And, I mean, you left at the end of the season. I'm thinking, like, well, you were let go, but then we had players like Elvis Hammond and Mark De Vries, who, God bless them, they weren't the best strikers we'd ever had at the club.
Yeah, and I think, well, it was the start of the next season I left, but I think then things went really bad. Not just coincidentally, they obviously went downhill. I think it was difficult for Craig coming over, to England, to a club that was, I think, a difficult one to get right with the squad that was there, getting performances out of those players. A difficult job, big job, and
how did it affect the team then? Because obviously Mickey Adams, he'd gone through a lot with the club, and like you say, you don't wish any manager having to sort of go through non-footballing problems, but he was liked, and he'd taken us back up. Let's be honest with you, and all the troubles. But did it sort of, how does it affect a player when because that's the guy that's brought you in, and therefore has faith in you, and yet he leaves.
Yeah, because obviously they're more likely to play you because they signed you and shelled out for you. So yeah, absolutely. But I was one of those players that I did realise that and appreciate. I worked. It wasn't through lack of trying that it didn't quite work out. And I wasn't one of those players who would be bitching about a manager behind his back or whatever. If I wasn't delivering and scoring and playing well, it hurt me. So I didn't really do anything else. I didn't have a hobby. I didn't play golf. I didn't do. I just focused on my football. To be honest, that was me. So it hurt. And when things weren't going right, it's not like you go home and forget about it. So I think for Leicester, it was a big club with a big squad and some big personalities in there. But I don't know whether it was unbalanced, old, lacking pace. There's a few things you could say that it didn't have that maybe contributed to it. Maybe both ends of the pitch didn't have enough pace. Vastly experienced and terrific players, but maybe didn't quite have all the ingredients, for a balanced squad, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we finished 15th at the end of that season. We'd won 12, we'd lost 13. What was what led up to you leaving?
Well, one, I think Leicester needed the money.
Right. Always did at that in those days.
Yeah, which is probably surprising, but they've just written off however much, 100 whatever million today. In those days, I remember, when I was leaving, talking to Andrew Neville, and I might have been owed whatever, and they'd made a good profit on me, and all things considered, but they did have a need for the money, they did. So, and it was they had to balance the books, and once the offer came in, then I wanted to go and play in the Premier League, and I did, and I scored on my debut for Wigan, and Leicester could have dug the heels in and asked for too much money and then priced me out of a move. But in the end, they didn't. And so I was grateful for that.
We did make quite a bit on you. I think we bought you, was it for $500,000, sold you for 2 with a possibly going up to 3 if Wigan stayed up, which they did. So we didn't do so bad out of you.
Yeah.
Even back then we were buying players and making profits on them.
Yeah, exactly. So although, to be honest, the club were battling to keep every penny, even they might have owed me a bit, but in the end, we reached an agreement on it because I think they were getting, well paid, and I was at whatever I was owed. I should have had it, and I got it in the end. Completely different times, I guess, to where we are now.
Yeah. You were at Wigan, I think, for the one season, was it?
Yeah. So I was at Wigan, and then Roy Keane took over at Sunderland, and it's difficult to turn down going and play for Roy. So I played with Roy. He was teammate, the
sort of man you say no to, is he?
Well, I mean, exactly. You knew that this might be the start of something, and it was. It was an incredible season. Something that I don't know, it'd be hard to replicate anywhere else. The impact, I think, when Roy came to the club and then I joined, other players joined. I think we were third bottom or second bottom, something like, I can't remember, fourth from bottom maybe in the championship. So and Wigan went well. Ironically, we just had the Carabao Cup, but at Wigan I played in every round. Scored the winner against Newcastle in either the quarters or the round before. Played against Arsenal in the semis, and then pulled my hamstring and didn't play in the what was then the League Cup final. So Wigan had a great season, but Paul Jewell wanted Henri Camara up top, who was a really good striker with Jason, and so I was like the backup, and so that's how it came to go to Sunderland. And I enjoyed my time at Wigan. Like I say, top 10 finish and Carabao Cup, reaching the Carabao Cup, Carling Cup. That was good success for Wigan then. Really, really good and great. Great lads. Yeah. But I think you don't turn down when Roy takes over at Sunderland.
No. During this time, of course, you were also playing for the Republic of Ireland. We touched on it before. 41 caps for Ireland. If my memory serves me right, they didn't make it into the Euro '96, did they?
No, we didn't make it Euro, and that was when I got my first cap. But we missed out on 2 tournaments, in terrible circumstances going into playoffs. And I played in all those games, and I think that squad should have played in 3 major tournaments. We were, I think, 5 seconds away from playing at Euro 2000, and we conceded from a corner. Put us in the playoffs, and then we lost in the playoffs on away goals. So, that was a really good period playing for Ireland, because we had a great
you weren't. That wasn't during the time when Thierry Henry accidentally handled the ball, was it? No.
So I think whenever my last cap was, but I didn't play. I didn't play in that game, no, which, yes, terrible Thierry.
Yeah, yes. I'm sure it was the other hand of God that Maradona didn't use.
Yeah.
But, I mean, again, must have been very proud being called up for your home nation.
Yeah, of course. I mean, something that you, as I said, we'd mostly playing Gaelic games when I was a kid, but I would be in Ireland every holiday, and I'd be wearing Irish kits or Liverpool kits around because of all the Irish players, and you never think you're going to play for Ireland, but yeah, really it was wonderful when it happened.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, you've had an amazing career, 460 appearances league-wise, 41 national, 178 goals. What memories do you take? What are your favourite memories from the time?
Well, I think there's it's not easy to be a player, and to have a career. To be honest, it's quite hard work to make it as a pro. So I guess when I was growing up, you dreamed about being a footballer, not for the money, just because in those days no one really talked about the money. Whereas nowadays you can't get away from the money. But when you're a kid and when I was young, you just wanted to play football. And if you could be a football player, I'd be like, wow, brilliant. So I think to actually become one was something that I didn't think would happen. But it just seemed to happen quite naturally without, and then, I guess playing for the clubs I played for, playing for my country, playing in Europe, maybe playing internationally, World Cup, I think I scored in every division, League Two, League One, Championship, Premier League, scored internationally. Would I have liked maybe even better career? Yeah, probably would if I could do things a bit differently, a bit better. But I think by and large, pretty pleased. And I could have easily, to be honest, probably retired about 5 years earlier than I did. And in some ways, I think it's like a battle you have with yourself as a player because, I didn't want to just give up. So I had so many operations, I had so many injuries, but I just had a sort of personal pride to want to get fit and keep playing. I don't know why, just to play. And I think I played till I was 38. And I think, even if I dropped down, I didn't have an ego to go, I'm not going to play there, I'm not going to play there. I kind of, I wanted to play with people that I knew or a manager who was in charge. And, so that's a 20-year career is it's not easy to play for 20 years. And along that way, a few highs, obviously a lot of lows, and got to play with some great players, and good experiences. Yeah.
Nate, I mean, following on from that, Nate actually asked here: were there any teams, regardless of who played there, that you always worked your hardest to score against?
I don't think so, but there's some maybe teams that I didn't seem to get on well with. But I nearly signed for Crystal Palace. I met Dougie Friedman, and he had all these stats about teams I was in, and they had a high win percentage. And he was really selling it that he wanted me to come and join Palace. But ironically, I never enjoyed playing Palace. I either got sent off or lost, or things went badly against Palace. So there's a few clubs like that maybe that it didn't go quite so well with, but that's probably one of them, certainly.
What's it like when you play against a team that you've played for before, and when you score against them, do you celebrate, don't you celebrate?
I mean, I think for Leicester I scored against Watford. It has happened. I'm not one of these that rubs anything in. I'm not really, one of those sorts of people. But I also not someone who wouldn't not celebrate. I can't recall. I'd probably just enjoy the actual goal rather than rubbing anyone's sort of face in it. I think players, what? I think, there's nothing wrong with celebrating, even if it is against your old goal. You can still be respectful, even if it is against your old club,
Looking down the full length of the pitch to celebrate in front of the
because you don't want to be a sycophant as well, because then it's disingenuous if you, to me anyway. So I think there is a balance there.
Yeah. We were speaking before we came live, and you hit on it again when you were talking about Holland and coming back to England, that you used to playing in 4-4-2, but when you were over in Holland, you were a lone striker. And we've got a manager at the moment, obviously, in Brendan Rodgers, that seems to love the lone striker. I mean, there was a season, a couple of seasons ago, when he had to play 4-4-2. Well, he had to play two up front, with Kelechi, Iheanacho, and Jamie Vardy. And Kelechi Iheanacho ended the season, as top goal scorer. Yeah. And yet, next season, it's back to one up front again. It's got to be frustrating, like I said, when you're scoring so many goals and yet you're not getting into the side.
Yeah, I mean, there was that. I mean, he scored as well. He scored with Daka, didn't he? When, or he assisted Daka. In Europe, those two got on brilliantly. Yeah. It is hard because I think he likes to have, for Brendan, he deviates, doesn't he, between a one-man holder or two holding midfielders or one. I think probably if indeed he is fit and firing and playing every week, you can afford to have Wilf as just the single one. And then what do you do ahead of the ball? Well, he likes to have two attacking midfielders, doesn't he? He likes to have, minimum, if he only has one holder, two attacking mids, or if he has two holders, he'll have someone in the number 10 position. And probably Leicester with all their, with Tielemans and, when they had, got Albrighton or Barnes or whatever, or, they've got wingers, right? They've got wingers. So if you've got wingers, where does a second and you've got talented and you've got talented creativity in midfield and decent holding midfield players, where do you fit a second striker in?
Yeah.
That's probably, and he's probably worried about the protection in front of what is not. I don't think Leicester's strength is the two centre halves. And I think had a lot of injuries. You've had a lot of changes of the pairings at the back. There've been so many changes in that back four. Sometimes you want to go with a bit more protection in front of it with two holding midfield players and being a bit more solid. And that means it's difficult to get a second striker in. So it is tough. It is tough.
And I know it's only a short career. I mean, I know 20 years, but you have to make the most of it while you're playing because you don't know when it's going to be over. A bad injury or something takes you out. But how do you look? I'm not asking you to sort of say anything controversial, but we've got Youri Tielemans, a player here that could very easily sign a contract, put loads of clauses in it to say, if this club comes in for me or if this price is matched, I'll leave. But at least that way, the club would get some money back on him. But at this rate, we're going to be losing nearly 40 million. Yeah,
it is a worry, because you could say, right, when do you start as a club engaging those players into talks on a new deal? Because there is a tipping point where that tipping point will be where the player will go, well, you know what? I'm not going to start discussing a new deal because in 12 months' time, I'll have 6 months left, and then I can go for free. I can talk to clubs and sign a pre-contract or whatever. So it comes down to, I think, now this is separate, but obviously you see Chelsea with all these players and the 8-year contracts spreading the cost for FFP. But whether length of contracts is something that it's a fine line, right? Because you give out an 8-year contract. How often is a manager at a club for however many years? And then what if you don't want that player? Is that player going to end up with 100 loans like all the Chelsea players? And sort of when you stretch out that contract and the monetary value per year over the 8 years, it helps the club balance the books, right? But
of course,
what if they don't work out? What if you gamble on someone from abroad and it doesn't work out? Are you going to come to an agreement on 6 years' money?
Yes.
Or it's a bit different than 1 year's money or 2 years' money, or
And so, sort of the fairness contracts, they're good for the player, but once the player, if he doesn't want to be there, the contracts really aren't worth the money they're written on. I mean, it even happened, back in the day. But when you got to look at the Fofana situation, virtually going on strike and refusing to play, just so he could get a leave. So you sign these players for 8 years, but you don't know that they're going to be. There that long.
No, you don't. And I guess, there's some players that will have real ambition to maybe want to go and do something else, or you know, with Yuri, maybe, you know, he's obviously maybe talking to, or his agent might be talking to clubs and, you know, have feelers out for what that next move might, you know, might be. But that, I think he'll be a big loss. I think I think he'll be a really bad. And then obviously you'll have James Maddison, who might be going, well, you know, come on, where's now we're missing Yuri. How long is Jamie Vardy going to be around? And if Jamie's not around, you know,
other players see it and think, well, he did it. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And obviously Casper's gone. You know, now, you know, whether I heard Casper would have stayed if he'd have got similar money, but the club weren't willing to do the length of contract with a similar money. So maybe Yuri's thinking, well, you know, you're not going to be able to satisfy me here. You didn't satisfy Casper, so
yeah, that's a fair point.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just, you know, reading between the lines, and I'm not on the inside, but you know, I can imagine they're the sort of conversations that you know, that are going on and have been had.
Thanks so much for coming on. I'm going to let you go. But I've got one last question for you, because we touched on Jamie Vardy a couple of times, and I mean, obviously the guy is an absolute hero. He had the chance to leave for whatever reasons he didn't. He stayed, and we're so grateful that he did. He's coming now. I think he's coming towards the end of his career. Whether this is his last season or not, possibly. But he can't. I mean, it's an amazing story, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, he is like a hero. I mean, what a career! Yeah, I love that he's a down to earth, normal guy. You know, he's like one of us. Just seems a regular guy. That's an amazing player. That has had a incredible story. You want him to keep going. What you want him to do is, if he is going to play less, is that he's still at the club, but he comes off the bench, or he's used. Yeah. Now, will he be happy with that? Well, I think I don't know, but I would say the older you get, you might want to play, but also as long as the manager shows that you've got worth to that team, it might be 45 minutes, it might be 30 minutes, it might be 90 minutes in this game, or 70 minutes in that game. But there's no doubt that long-term successor is something that is, Leicester can't escape. They're going to have to, and obviously Kelechi, I don't know if he is the one, or Patson, or someone else. I don't know whoever that next one will be. It will be an expensive, I imagine, signing, unless they can pull an absolute rabbit out the hat like they have done maybe a few years ago.
We've got the young guy that we bought from the American club that's with out to Leven. The problem I feel we're going to have is we've never replaced Mahrez, but we've got to accept we probably never will replace Mahrez because he was such a fantastic player. But every player that's come in, it's like, oh, he's not he's not the next Mahrez. He's not as good as Mahrez.
Well, they've been. I guess you've been spoiled a little bit. I mean, the other parallel would be a club like how Leicester did business with all those players. When they won the Premier League and the recruitment was so good, picking up relative unknowns and turning them into superstars and selling them for vast money. It's kind of what Brighton or some others are doing at the minute. And it's difficult to keep replicating that. It really is, because everyone is looking in the similar places. So to find those jewels is hard. Or you got to get them in early from the Championship, like they did with Maddison. It might be expensive at the time, but it's one of them that will work. So it's a tough balance, because I know probably Leicester fans feel they haven't signed as many players as maybe you would have wanted in this window compared to others, compared to others in and around you. Look at Forest or whoever, but the starting squad from Leicester obviously is a lot stronger. So that's and if everyone's fit, then it's different.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, we have been spoilt. That is the problem, and I just hope, because you say it with Daka all the time, like, Vardy would have got that, and you're thinking, like, he's not Vardy, and it maybe we're going to go through a couple of strikers before, again, that finally wears off. But I mean, we've always had that, Leicester. That I can remember. I mean, I was at school with Gary Lineker, so that was my sort of era when I got into football, and we had to sell him to keep going. And maybe we're not in that position now. Well, we're not in that position now, but we do get these bargains, if you like, and sell them for lots of money. Mahrez, Maguire, Chilwell, etc. But again, that is the financial setup of the club.
Yeah, I mean, what you have now that obviously you've got all the facilities, right? So you're going to impress, you're going to blow away, like Harry Souttar said. So Harry Souttar might be your next Maguire.
Yeah,
might be, right? Because I think Harry Souttar has done really, really well for Stoke. He's done excellently for Australia. He might be someone that you buy in and he kicks on his career, and that is a good signing from the Championship that can bridge that gap. And there's nothing wrong with them. You'll have to there's those players, and then you'll have to try and pluck some others from elsewhere. And that's where John Rudkin and people like that, their job is so important now, because there's your Brentfords, there's your Brightons that are could Brentford have signed Ivan Toney or some, when Ivan went to Brentford, was he on Leicester's radar? Because these are the sort of the questions that, because I've been in recruitment, these are the questions that will be asked. How do we miss out on him, or did he fit our profile? What is Leicester's profile, right? Are they they're a counter-attacking team? They're paced, always been a counter-attacking team for the last 5, 6, 7 seasons, I would say. So is it players in that model? Counter-attacking team, plenty of pace, or are they going to develop a different sort of style? It's but look, the likes of Harvey Barnes and people like still got great.
I love the fact that so many clubs were sort of you sign sort of say a Patson Daka or wherever we sign in people. Another fans are like what we call the big clubs. The Arsenal say, "Oh, we were looking at him. We shouldn't have bought him." But the fact of the matter is that they won't take the gamble.
Yeah, and sometimes it is a gamble, right? I mean, sometimes it is a gamble that because there's one thing to buy these players, as Brendan's vast experience, but you've got to then be able to know that you can trust them to go and play, week in, week out, and deliver for you. He knows the bulk of his team, I think, can deliver, but maybe he's not sure on Patson as a lone striker or Kelechi as a lone striker. So it's difficult.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan, big Burnley fan there, Turf Moorhouse TV. Thanks for popping in. Great podcast, great guest. I think we are both well. You were saying about recruiting there. Nate was asking, after a long career, have you been involved in the game after retiring? Well, the answer to that is yes, isn't it?
Yeah. So I was player coach at Portsmouth. Then I retired and I went into coaching I was Millwall's youth team under 18 coach. Then I worked for Bristol City with Lee Johnson, and we'd do opposition analysis, next opponents, recruitment, scouting. So and then now predominantly media, radio and stuff. So it's so I did have that I was in football, and then it's hard to do both, because if you're getting a lot of media work, you can't, you have to be at football games at the same time. So something had to give, and then obviously if media work dries up, you think, I should have stayed in football, So it's elusive to find the right thing.
Yeah. And I'm going to leave with this question here, and thank you for your time. But this last one, and it's a hard one, and it's going to put you on the spot, but we like these sort of questions. Who does you think will be relegated from the Premier League this season?
Oh, my God.
And if you say Leicester, remember, I've got the mute button.
Well, I think Southampton will. I think Bournemouth will. And the last one, I think Sean Dyche's a really good manager. So I'd like to think he's going to have an impact on them and get them out. If I had to stick my neck out, Wolves or Leeds, I'm going to say Leeds. I don't know. He's the long and short of it.
You know what? It's scary. At the start of the season, when I predicted where all the teams were going to finish, my bottom three were Leeds, Bournemouth, and Southampton.
Oh, really? Yeah. I mean, Southampton, another former team, a bit like Leicester had great recruitment as well. And have tried. And it's sometimes it's difficult to keep replicating it. And they've just brought in a new director of football. Who, ironically, Jason Wilcox, who we played with, who was at Leicester.
Yes.
So let's see what how they their model is. They've got in a lot of youngsters, signed players from Man City, and but as we know, it can be a gamble, right? To get all those youngsters playing and firing, and I think that's what Brendan's wary of. I can't just bring in untried because they're not going to be better than what I've got. So you've got to make sure those players coming in are the right. I think Harry Souttar is good. I think Harry Souttar will be a really good signing for you.
I think so as well. I think Johnny Evans, bless him, again is coming towards the end.
Yeah.
Soyuncu, don't know what's gone on there, but he's just not in Rodgers' plans. Amati, is a Marmite sort of player with the fans. Some love him, some don't. So I think that is a great signing. I realise with those three that I've chosen, I'm shooting myself in the foot because I just live just outside Bournemouth. So Southampton and Bournemouth are two games I can get to very easily, and I don't really want them to go down. But
no. It's going to be a battle down there, make no mistake. But
yes,
and I wouldn't discount sort of up to Palace. I wouldn't discount up to them, because you just don't know. But I think it might be hard for the two South Coast teams.
Yeah, no, definitely. David, look, really do appreciate you giving up your time and doing this. It's great to have the ex-players on, but I really always, like I say, appreciate the time.
No problem.
That. And thank you very much. And take care of yourself and you and your family, and all the best for the future.
Cheers. No worries, Chris. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, David. All the best, mate.
Bye.
Thanks to David for coming on. I really do appreciate it when ex-players come on, and especially, like I say, because he is talking on the radio a lot as well. So the fact that they give up their time is really, really, really generous. His question is this.
Coming up next on Leicester Till I Die TV.
If you like these In Conversations With, then don't miss Monday at 9. Now, normally Monday at 9 we do the review show when we look back at the weekend's games. This Monday at 9, and no disrespect to any other player, but I get nervous before I do these. I don't know if I come across as nervous, but I'm absolutely shitting myself when I talk to ex-players. But this guy, for me personally, and I've spoken to, the Steve Walshes, the Elliots, the Taggarts, the Connollys, this guy I am really so looking forward to chatting with. If only to ask him if he's still got Juninho in his pocket, and that is Pontus Kamark. What a player. What a player when he was with us, and he does media work now. I'm going to have to speed up on my Swedish, aren't I? But no, what a great player, and I'm really, really looking forward to that. That's Monday at 9. But we are going to be back tomorrow at 5. We're going to be looking at Brendan's press conference for the Villa game, the first, obviously, conference after the window. So we're talking new players, I am sure. And then 9 o'clock, we've got a Villa fan coming on. 9 o'clock tomorrow, we are going to be doing the review show. And there might be a stat show in there as well. I don't know if I can fit it in or not. So, 5 o'clock, me and Brad doing the old manager's press conference review. And 9 o'clock is going to be chatting with a Villa fan. And we will be talking about the game. Like I say, big thanks to David. Really appreciate him coming on. Thank you very much, told you. I appreciate that. Always called it. It is always great to, and you know what I love, because these are players that I grew up watching. Like I say, you know, I was very much the Gary Lineker era. I was at school with him, with the same age, and so these are the players that I used to stand on the terraces and watch. I know, and I've watched this guy score hat tricks, and I'm thinking, you know, I look back and I'm thinking, like, you were only with us for one season. Why? You know, and you can find these. I'm getting all starstruck now, guys. But it's always, I can't believe, like I say, these guys that I sat there and watched and idolised, I'm actually talking to. So it's a great honour, and one I never take for granted. Like I say, always do appreciate the fact that they give up their time. I don't think it was going to happen. I think it had pretty much happened sort of lunchtime-ish yesterday. I think it had all kind of wasn't going to happen. I think, you know, maybe we will, you know, try to get it through because, of course, all Brighton's gone. I would have loved him. But I'm not going to I hate it when you start going, oh, he should have come to Leicester. And because I hate that when other teams say, you know, oh, should have come to Newcastle, should have come to Arsenal, Man United. So good luck to him. Whether we go back in the summer or not, because he's obviously talking a contract with Leeds. Like we said, that doesn't necessarily mean a thing, but, you know, I think, you know, they're fighting. They're in the relegation battle along with us. You know, do they want to sell a player to... I don't know whether he was, Nate. Was he in the... when having a medical? Because, of course, the other one is that I heard that they'd actually were saying no, and then they kind of softened their approach and said, well, yeah, let's have a look at it. Look, let's not be greedy. We've got 3 players in. It's a hell of a lot better window than the summer one was for us. So let's enjoy it for what it was. And let's see what Brendan's got to say tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Look, if you've been watching, thank you very much indeed. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new. Whether you're new or not, please smash those likes buttons. It really, really does help the channel. And if you have been listening on your favourite podcast platform, thank you for lending me your ears. You may have them back now. I've cleaned them out. You can have them back. I will see you tomorrow at 5. Take care, guys. Remember, whatever you do, don't do anything I wouldn't enjoy. Good night.
This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
That's all, folks.
Thanks for watching Leicester Till I Die. This is Chris saying goodbye, and see you next time.
Thanks for watching. These videos are tremendous. You better like them too, or I'll be back.
Leicester Till I Die.